Hello, Club New Life family and friends. Again, Chris Williams here, co-host of New Life Live and marriage and family therapist, entrepreneur and consultant. But most importantly here today is to really deliver some information I think is crucial to our lives. And that is, in the middle of this series of spiritual abuse and how do we recover, is just a 6-point process here today on how do we recover from spiritual abuse. What needs to happen? And so I want to talk a little bit about that. If we're in an environment where we were harmed and maybe had some traumatic experiences, maybe it was in a church or in a religious environment, in a spiritual environment, recovery from this can be really, really difficult and really tough. But what is true for all recovery process is true here. And that is the first thing that we need is a safe environment. If we're still trying to get recovery and health and healing while we're in abusive relationships, abusive places, or self-abuse, that could be like addictions, it's just not going to really go very far. It can move the needle a little bit, but we're going to hit a low ceiling. So oftentimes the hardest, most difficult yet most important decision that we can make is if we're in a spiritually abusive environment is to get out and to get ourselves in a safe environment. And a safe environment could be with people who genuinely care and love for us. That could be a treatment program. That could be a counselor, a therapist, group therapy, whatever that is, we want to get to safe people. The other thing that we'll need in recovery from spiritual abuse is safe relationships. Safe relationships are relationships that don't seek to control us or manipulate us. They have a high level of both truth and acceptance, and a high level of care. And we need these things to be able to recover from the relationships in a spiritually abusive environment that harmed us. One of the things that spiritual abuse and all abuse does, and traumatic experiences in our life, is it disconnects us from ourselves. Especially spiritually abusive environments tell us that we can't trust ourselves. We can't trust what we think, can't trust what we feel, ultimately can't trust our desires or our decisions. And so what happens in those environments is that the self, our bodies, get neglected and even get cut off. And it could be a very scary and disorienting experience to then get back in your own body, to reconnect to your own feelings and your own thoughts and your own needs, and ultimately reconnect to your own desires and, again, ultimately your own decisions. That takes a while. And so we need, this is number 3, we need to reconnect with ourselves. And that oftentimes, ironically, happens with the first 2, a safe environment and safe relationships and people to help us get there. And then number 4 is similar to that, is that we need to restore our own agency. And that, again, is the ability to feel our own feelings and think our own thoughts and have our own needs and meet those needs, as well as desires and decisions. Now, let me do a sidebar here. The pushback for us Christians on human agency is, doesn't our human agency, meaning man's will, man's broken will, cause a tremendous amount of harm in the world? And my answer is yes, it does. And what I'm speaking about here is healthy agency. Not all of our desires are healthy. Not all of our feelings are an accurate reflection of reality or our thoughts in alignment. We know this. But we can't work on any of those if we're not connected to them. And so obviously we need to have what now is number 5, wise counsel around us. This could be a really good and healthy therapist, again, group, but people who we admire, their agency, how they work their lives out, and it really shows up in the details of their lives. And we collect what I call a tribe, a council of wisdom around us to really kind of guide us in this process as we're recovering. And lastly, we need to engage in a healing process. And certainly, lastly, not leastly, number 6 is we've got to get into the work of really identifying what are the wounded and damaged parts inside of us that really need exposure for healing. So again, a good therapeutic process with a person who really understands spiritual abuse, its impact, and how to recover from that is really important. Recovery from these environments are possible. There's a couple warnings here. Our faith can oftentimes get shaken. We can experience this thing called deconstruction and all the other words that we want to use around sort of our faith really kind of getting shattered in both the abuse and the recovery from the abuse. But I really want to say that the reconstruction of faith, I think, is really, really important. It can take longer than we want it to, but to reconnect to the love of God that doesn't harm us, that does love us, that does accept us, and does lead us forward is such a huge and critical resource. And again, I want to encourage us in that going through this doesn't mean that we're going to leave the faith or throw the baby out with the bathwater. It just means that it will shift, it will change, that can be scary, but in the end we can discover a more authentic, stronger, and deeper rooted faith. So thanks for being with me today. If you've experienced spiritual abuse or you have someone in your life who has, have them check out this video. Also, have them call New Life. We have resources and help for people to get the recovery that they need. That's 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Thanks for being with me today, and I look for more time together.